UFC 324, Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett. Why is this fight happening in the UFC lightweight division? It doesn't make any sense. Why is Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett fighting for an interim title? Gaethje is coming off that decision win over number 11 Fiziev, number 11 ranked Fiziev. Yes, you heard me correctly. I know, and even a Fiziev that Justin already had a win over. And granted, I know that Fiziev was filling in for Hooker, who pulled out of that fight. That fight happened back in March on the Pereira Ankalaev 1 card. But still, so he got a win over number 11 ranked Fiziev, a decision win at that. And before that, he nearly was killed inside the octagon by Max Holloway, who dominated him for 4.5 rounds. And then in the last 10 seconds, he almost decapitated Gaethje. That was probably one of the most vicious finishes in Holloway's career, and might I even say Gaethje's career too. The way he got knocked out like that, it was brutal. But, since then, since March, when he picked up that decision win over Fiziev, he's sort of just been crying that, if I don't get a title shot, I'm going to retire. Like, dude, you're not even deserving of a title shot right now. You're entitled. You just won a decision over number 11 ranked Fiziev, and then you got brutally knocked out in the fight before that, and you're not not in that position. Even if Hooker never pulled out of that fight and Gaethje went in there and beat Hooker, you still wouldn't be deserving. That's on a 1-fight win streak, really? You'd have to do some more work, Gaethje, unfortunately. But the entitlement worked. The crying worked. He's fighting in January, and about a month from now, he's fighting for a interim world title, coming off a decision win on a 1-fight win streak. And then you got Pimblett. Now, Pimblett, I think he's 7 or 8, in the UFC. He's had some good performances. He's had some bad performances, specifically the Jared Gordon fight. A lot of people think that he lost that fight, including me. But Pimblett is coming off of a finish, which, that's at least he's finished his last opponent in Michael Chandler. But the asterisk there is that Michael Chandler at the time he was 2-4 in the UFC. He was on a 2-fight losing streak. Now he's 2-5 in the UFC. I believe at the time he was 38. And then prior to that, he beat. Let me see. Prior to that, I know he beat Bobby Green in a very good performance. That was a first-round finish. But before that, he fought the ghost of Tony Ferguson. Before that, he had that fight with Jared Gordon, which, like I said, I thought Jared won that fight. Before that, he finished Jordan Levitt. Before that, he finished Rodrigo Vargas. And then before that, he had his debut in 2021 against Luigi Vengermini in a good finish. But these two guys are probably the most undeserving of the title shot in that lightweight division right now, in that group of contenders with Arman and Holloway and Oliveira and like Gaethje and Pimblett. Those guys, the UFC picked the two worst options for that title shot. Why is Arman Tsarukyan not involved in this fight in some way, shape, or form? Why is he not involved in this fight? This guy's his last loss was, I think it was in 2019 against Islam. No, in 2022 he lost to Gamrot, which was a very close fight. A lot of people thought that he won it, and so since then I think he's gone on this streak. He's beaten these guys. I know back in January of 25, January of 25, he unfortunately he had the back injury, and he had to pull out of that Makhachev fight on a day's notice, sort of putting that whole pay-per-view in jeopardy. And I know that happened, and I know Dana and the UFC aren't super happy with him. But still, this dude has beaten pretty much everybody that they put in front of him. He's clearly the number one contender. Before a few weeks ago, when Arman fought Hooker, there was a lot of rumblings of them making a fight of Ilya fighting in January, and then making the fight of Paddy versus Ilya. And there was a lot of just rumors going around. And my thought was that they were just going to wait for this Hooker and Arman fight to play out and see where to go from there. If, say, Hooker goes in there and wins, that would affect the matchmaking of Ilya's next opponent. But Arman went in there and he kind of beat up Hooker. He won that fight, and still they made Gaethje versus Pimblett. It just makes no sense. It almost seems like a sort of like a screw you to Armin. You know, you just beat Hooker, who's on a 3 or 4 fight win streak, who just beat Gamrot. I know you just beat him, but you're gonna have to do some more work. In fact, I think I heard an interview with Dana White recently, and he says, you know, that kid's gonna have to do some work. He's gonna have to work his way back. Dude, he's the #1 contender. Work his way back from what? He had to pull out of a title fight in January, and now you're punishing him? And granted, I know that in that fight week, Armin was doing a lot of dumb stuff with the Nina drama interview, where he's doing all the weird, you know, back movements and the sort of being reckless, and he pulled out of that fight with a back injury. And so, unless there's more to this than we know, I'm completely baffled. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why Armin isn't fighting for the title next. They gave this the interim shot to the Unk Destroyer and the entitled crybaby of the lightweight division. And I even think of guys like Max Holloway. They had a seasonal press conference. I think it was on Friday. And you had Pimblett and Gaethje going up against each other in sort of the main fight on that press conference stage. You had the Nunes Harrison fight, and then you had Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira, two guys who have brutal KOs, or not KOs, but brutal finishes over Gaethje. And like Max Holloway, who just brutally knocked him out, that's got to feel weird, you know, seeing after you knock this guy out, he's fighting for an interim title in your division. And so whoever's in the matchmaking room putting these fights together is on crack, and I don't know what's going on. But I mean, I'm sure it'll be a fun fight. It'll be a finish. But yeah, the entitled crybaby versus the Unk abuser is happening in January. And so I'm looking forward to it. And yeah,